Welcome back to DS Trucks. So we just got the oil change to 5W40 Motorcraft, and I'm kind of curious on the differences with this new oil. So right now, as the truck sits, we're getting 13.9 to the gallon, and that's just my driving and just kind of, tons of idling and whatever, warming up in the morning. So I'm going to go ahead and reset this, and we're going to drive the truck from here, get on the freeway, kind of drive it in, an efficient kind of a manner. I'll go ahead also and put the truck in eco mode here with this knob. And there we go, we're in eco mode. And I'm just gonna drive it kind of efficiently because I've driven the truck this way before efficiently with the factory oil, which is presumably 10W30, but then again, we don't know exactly what oil viscosity and all that is in the factory oil. It could be 540 for all I know, but it seems as if it's 1030. But comment below if you'd be interested in seeing that oil analysis, because I did not send that oil off, and I just haven't sent it off. So we're gonna take the truck over to the freeway, and we're gonna go ahead and drive it and see kind of how it does against the outgoing model, or I'm sorry, the outgoing oil. Does the 540 make the MPG better? Does it make it worse? Or is it the same? Let's go ahead and see. I don't know. It's a thicker viscosity than what was in there, but that's one of the things about this Ford diesel, the Ford 6.7 Powerstroke, is straight up they've got two different viscosities. Two different viscosities that they run in the truck. They either run a 40 weight or 30 weight, whether it's a 040, 540, or 1540 versus a 1030, but they don't have a 530. They only have a 1030. So why? What's the reasoning behind it? How did they come up with these viscosities and all that? How did they come up with an engine that straight up has a 40 weight and a 30 weight, totally different weights? So a 1030 typically is interchangeable with a 030, a 530, and obviously a 1030. And the general difference between those three weights is gonna be their cold flow, not as much their hot flow. So the idea behind these weights is a 030 weight oil is going to flow closer to the weight of a hot 30 weight oil, which is all this is kind of confusing now, because how does it have a 0 attached to it? How does it have a 5 attached to it? How does it have a 10 attached to it? Where did these numbers come from? Well, you'd have to first of all be comparing them to a single weight oil, and a single weight oil has a very, very, very different characteristic based on temperature. Like a 30 weight oil is going to be real thick. A true 30 weight oil, just one weight to the oil, 30 weight. You're typically not going to find it on your shelves anymore in your auto parts store. I don't know. You probably have to order it from like an industrial type of place, like a single straight up oil, because we've been using multi-weight oils for so long. Those are now the normal. But in order to really know why there's even a 30 weight oil and all that exists is way back in the day. I'm talking 1900s, early 1900s, maybe the 20s or so. Yeah, you put 30 weight in your vehicle or 40 weight in your vehicle or whatever, and you just had to kind of deal with the reality of that oil being real thick in the cold and having to start up and having to warm up, and the oil just wouldn't pump correctly in the cold. Since, World War II and all those battles and all that crazy stuff that happened during World War II, oil shortages and stuff like that, came the development of a lot of these synthetics that had the cold flowing characteristics of the oil, so that it could actually flow better when it's cold and run longer, because there was those issues during wartime. So if you think about the last great wars, particularly World War II, a lot of innovations came around with every industry, and certainly with the automotive industry. So I believe multi-weight. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just going off the top of my head. I'm not a historian here, but correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe in the 40s and around that time is when these synthetics really started to get developed and really started to be promoted. I'm going to actually slow my speed down a hair. I'm traveling 70 just talking, but I want to do like a comparison. And one of the good comparisons that I have is when I was going around 65, 70. So I'm going to do that. And honestly, I think on that day when I did the test, I went around 70. And like I said, I'm kind of curious on what this 40 weight means. And should I just run a 1030 if I'm trying to be more efficient with the engine? Does that even matter? Maybe it's the same. So we're locking it in at 66 for now. But back to what I was saying, I believe around the 40s is when they started coming out with these multi-weight oils. After like World War II, 40s and 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s is when multi-weight oils really started to be prevalent. So even way back in the 60s, you start to see your 1030 oils, 10W30, 10W40. And basically what that would mean is it's really a whole different animal from a straight 40 weight. It's not the same thing no more. A straight 40 weight becomes very, 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 very thick in cold weather. And then as it warms up, it hits its operating temperature and it thins out a whole bunch, and it becomes what it is at its operating temp. So what would a 5W40 be? Well, it's a totally different product at the end of the day compared to a true 40 weight. And it's basically able to mimic what a 40 weight would be at its operating temperature by somehow uncoiling a molecule or coming up with a formulation that for all intents and purposes it's a 40 weight at operating temperature, and it flows better, significantly better at its startup temperature. So 0W40 weight oil, what is that? It's a formulation of oil that's similar in weight at all times, no matter really what you're doing, to 40 weight at operating temperature, at full operating temperature. So as it gets warmer, instead of its viscosity degrading like you would expect from an oil, as it gets warmer, the viscosity changes. It's got something in it that gives it viscosity. As the viscosity is going down, there's something inside of that oil that's rising the viscosity up to counteract the lowering of viscosity that naturally happens as the oil heats up. So typical 40 weight oil, the old way back in the day, would have been so thick at startup, but it would have been the weight that's needed to protect that particular piece of equipment, engine, machinery, whatever, vehicle. That would be the weight, because you need weight in order to protect the engine. You can't just say, hey, it's, we're going to run thinner oil, especially in those days, because thinner oil meant that there was more metal to metal contact and more wear. Whereas nowadays, that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes now, some oils that are a little bit thinner, a little bit lower viscosity, can still have a lot of protection because of the way they've been able to refine these oils and make them offer a lot more protection. So typically a thicker oil has more protection. There's a ceiling to that, to where it's so thick it won't pump good, and then it doesn't have as much protection because it doesn't pump as well. Like, you can't expect grease to lubricate your engine, but grease is a great lubricant inside of like a bearing, like a wheel bearing. It's not going to work inside of an engine. So back to what I'm saying in the beginning is, how did they come up with an engine that runs on 1030? If you're going to run an engine on 1030, shouldn't it run on either 1030, 530, or 030? Because at operating temperature, 1030, 530, and 030 are going to behave similar. And at operating temperature for a 40 weight, 040, 540, and 1540 are going to behave similarly as well to each other. So how did they come up with an engine that runs 1030, which 30 should be a lot more efficient of an oil because it's significantly thinner at operating temperature? A 40 weight oil is significantly thicker at operating temperature, so shouldn't be as efficient. But does that really matter in an engine this size? So right now we're getting 15.5 miles to the gallon, but we're hitting freaking traffic. What the heck? So 15.6, and I kind of remember, this isn't cool, freaking traffic, kind of skewing my results here. But I kind of remember, maybe I should have my Android map up to tell me what the heck's going on before I get too far. Construction for a few miles. Not cool. So these results are going to be a little bit skewed. I'm at 15.9 miles to the gallon according to the computer, which a lot of people don't respect that. But at the end of the day, at least we're comparing computer to computer results to other computer results. So around this time, obviously we're dropping now because of this traffic, which is unforeseen. But around this time, I believe this truck was getting better MPG with that factory oil, which was a 1030. So kind of raises the question, do I really want to run this 540 oil, or do I want to go back to a 1030? Or do I want to just go to a 1030 but run a real nice high-end 1030 like AMSOIL or like a Hot Shot Secrets? Because a 1030, is this why I'm getting all of a sudden less oil, less MPG? I literally just changed this oil just now. Like, it's literally freshly changed oil. So 5W40 is going to be your severe duty oil. But can I get as good a protection or good enough protection just running the 1030? I think so. I mean, the 1030 diesel oil is going to be fine from Motorcraft. And I'm very curious at this point, if I were to run them back to back, 1030 Motorcraft versus 540 Motorcraft, would I see an improvement in MPG at 15? I mean, I recall this truck getting much better MPG. Or if I, did like an FR3 friction reducer from Hot Shot Secrets, which actually is a pretty good product. I think it thins down viscosity a little bit, from my buddy Tom Jubb, who's always leaving comments. He's mentioned that his oil viscosity is a bit lower using that FR3 friction reducer. He's reporting that his oil analysis are saying that he's running a 1030 or a 30 weight oil versus a 40 weight oil. So very interesting. These 1030s, one of the things I think is a misconception with these weights of oil is the idea that a 540 is too thin because of the 5 that's connected to a 40 compared to a 15W40. And that's kind of a tough one according to the bottle, and according to the research and all that. That 40 weight oil should perform as well as a 15W40. So why run 15W40 if you can get 540 and it does the same thing, except it gives you better cold performance? I do believe 1540s are cheaper. And down south, which I'm not down south, I'm up north, we have winters and we have cold nights. We have our summers too, but for us, 540 has been fine. 1540 in the winter would probably be okay because it's still a multi-weight oil. It's not going to be as pleasant to start it up, but it's still going to do okay, I think. I mean, I never tried it, but I think it's still an okay oil to run even in the winter. What you wouldn't want to do, and which is not going to be recommended from Ford, is to straight run 40 weight. It needs to be at least a 1540 weight. But basically, according to what you would hear if you went to like an AMSOIL guy who's supposed to be educated on all this stuff, or what you research if you were reading information about this, is a 5W40, a 0W40, a 15W40 should behave similarly and should have a similar viscosity at operating temperature, and it wouldn't matter which one you use. And if you read the manual, the range on their 040, their 540, and their 15W40, they all can get you through the winter, but a 15W40 doesn't get you through a real cold area. I think a 15W40 gets you it gets you to like barely okay here in Michigan in the winters, but pretty much technically okay by the book in the winters for most, until like you reach certain points in the winter where it gets real cold. The 0W40 though has the full range when you look at the manual. As far as the hot side, it goes real cold, pretty much dang near cold enough to be run anywhere on this planet, and then with enough viscosity to be approved through the manual to run at any hot temperature that you can come up with. So is it down south, what I've heard from people down south is 540 too thin, 040 too thin. Maybe me not being down south or ever trying it, I can't really argue against that, but I don't know. I've never ran a 1540. It seems like though you'd have a ton of variation based on when the engine started versus how it is once it's been running for an hour. Like it kind of goes through a viscosity change, and I feel that with the 040, 540s, especially the 040 freaking is the same stuff almost that it is when it's hot as it is when it's cold. And then there's just ranges altogether. Like we're calling all these oils 540 regardless of the manufacturer. We're calling them all 540, but to even be a 40 weight oil, there's a lot of variation of weight between all the 40 weight oils. Like one can barely be a 40 weight and is almost a 30 weight, and then one can barely be a 40 weight and is almost a 50 weight, as long as it fits in. Dang, it's shaky. Are we death wobbling? No, we're just hitting the freaking. One can almost be a 50 weight because it's so thick, but still technically in the class of a 40 weight. And one can almost be a 30 weight because it's kind of borderline. So these numbers are not the most precise numbers out there. There's tests and stuff that detect what they are. So you could be running one oil that after you run it for an oil life, it's now a 30 weight because it broke down. Or you can run one that's still a 40 weight because it started closer to the higher end of whatever the range of 40 weight would be. So it's a lot of variation in just a 30 weight or 40 weight. But comment below let me know what you guys think, because this video is running almost 20 minutes. I am going to get out of this traffic because this is ridiculous. I'm going to reset the gauge and I'm going to drive back and see what this truck can get, and just driving without freaking gridlock traffic. So let me go ahead and do that, finish this thing off, and we'll go from there. See you guys on the way back. So I'm at 15.6. I should have a clear shot on the way home. I'm gonna go ahead and reset this. I'm already up to speed, and I'm gonna see what this truck can get after just changing to a thicker viscosity oil. How much will this affect my MPG? All right, so I'm gonna do this. We'll put some miles up and I'll touch base. All right, that's it. Locked in at 66. We're getting 19.4, 19.5 miles to the gallon. I think we pretty much hit our ceiling with an 8, and we're at 9 mile stretch here. It ain't getting no better, I don't think. This was reset while moving, so it's kind of a little bit cheating for the truck, but I feel it's a little lower since getting this oil, this 5W40 oil, compared to the factory stuff that came out. I was putting up at least 21 or 20, so not a whole lot, but I feel it's a little bit lower MPG. I'll double check the footage. Maybe I'll link the video where I initially tested this truck with the factory oil, doing the same thing, a eco mode driving loop. And yeah, we're getting a little bit lower MPG, I feel, since switching to the 540. So maybe I'll try the friction reducer from Hot Shot Secrets. I've had good luck with that. I feel it's a good diesel additive. And maybe from there, I think I'm gonna go back to my favorite oil of all the oils in these trucks that I've put in these trucks. My favorite was Hot Shot Secrets 10W30 FR3 PAO oil. That's been my favorite oil that I've put in any of these trucks. So anyway, that's it for the channel, or that's it for the video, not the channel, hopefully. My name is Sean. This is DS Trucks. Over and out.